Now we're going to be looking at revising the literacy narrative. Revising is just looking at your first draft and seeing what you need to repair with it. We're looking at the first draft of your literacy narrative so you can turn it in for your final draft this week. And as with every draft that I do, first draft, second draft, whatever, there's always some symptoms, some things that are wrong with it that need to be removed. So let's take a look at the first draft symptoms. One of the things that's easy to do when you're talking about yourself is to get a little bit too into the story. You're going to be talking a little bit too much, maybe give some too many details. It's going to be overlong. Maybe you'll find yourself meandering. You're not going in one direction, or you're talking here or there or something. So you're maybe telling too much story, or you're telling a story in just too much of a meandering fashion, like you know where you're going, but you're just kind of holding off the point. Or maybe you're not focused. You have too many stories that you're wanting to tell, and you're not directing the story. This is what happened, and this is what happened, and then this is what happened. Or maybe you you get off topic. You know, as you are writing about something, specifically writing about yourself, you're going to see that you're going to maybe get off topic. There might be something that you're writing about and that reminds you of something else, and you're writing on that subject now, and you realize, you know what, that's not exactly what I wanted to talk about. So you get off topic. You need to back up a little bit and go back into the story that you should be telling. And then, as I mentioned earlier with the unfocused, maybe you have too many stories. Maybe there are a couple of things that were important to you, and you talked about those, and then those brought up a little bit more, and that brought up a little bit more, and that brought up a little bit more. So maybe you need to look at the story and say, this is exactly what I want to do. This is the exact story that I want to tell. Here's the important thing. So you trim out some of those extra stories. So those are some symptoms of what's going on. So let's take a look at how to repair those things. Now, I know that we've gone through this a few times. We've looked at fixing what needs to be repaired in your writing, but let's continue. If you have too many stories, or you are meandering a little bit, maybe you need to cut out the extra. Take a look at exactly what you have said. Does it serve the overall thesis? Does it serve the narrative that you're trying to share? If not, then just trim it. Even if it does trim it, maybe it's an ancillary material. Maybe it's a material that is repeating something you've already said. So cut that out. Trim that down. Maybe after you've written it, you need to create a new outline. So maybe you created an outline for your first draft, and then you wrote it, and now you are working on your final draft. And as you're working, you see, oh, wait a minute, I need to refocus on what I'm doing. So maybe take the paper that you have written and make an outline out of that paper. Does your first outline and your final outline, do they follow the same thing? Do they follow the same pattern, the same process of materials? If they don't, then that's just fine. Maybe you have revised what you wanted to say a little bit, but this new outline could then help you further revise your topics. You can trim down that extra stuff. You can trim out that extra story that you talked about. Maybe trim some extra paragraphs or extra lines. Maybe there was something that you didn't see was necessary in there. There's also, you might need to add some stuff. You might need to say, there's a little bit more of this story that I need to tell. So that could be revising the topics as well. You might need to tell a little bit more. You need to add some dialogue. Maybe there's some formatting of the story that needs to change a little bit. So there's a lot to look at. There's a lot more than just these four things, but there's definitely some places to improve your writing. Doesn't matter if it's just a word or two. Sometimes cutting out that word or two really, really helps the story flow a little bit better. So now that you have the first draft done, you have to edit that bad first draft. And to be honest, every first draft ever written is bad. That's what it is. It's a first draft. That's why you are writing. That's why you are working on submitting something that is a good product at the end, because that first draft is always going to be terrible. That's just the nature of it. There is nobody ever in the history of the world that has written their first draft and it has been perfect in every single way. So don't feel bad about me saying that this is a bad first draft, and don't feel bad about your first draft not turning out exactly as you wanted to. It's just the nature of it. So you need to ask some important questions as you're working on your draft. You need to look at the sequence of events and see, is it clear? Are the secret sequence of the events in the narrative, are they clear? Does it flow? And is there an effective transitions? Does the narrative get sidetracked at any point? That means just make sure you're staying on focus. Is anything confusing? Maybe there's things that you lived and you told this story and you wrote about it, and because you've lived it, you know what's going on. You know everything that is about this story. So maybe it might be completely clear to you, but maybe it's confusing after you've read it through. Maybe you read it out loud and you see, oh, this is kind of confusing. I left out some important points. Is there enough detail? And are these details interesting? Just because you have detail doesn't mean it's interesting. I can give you a step-by-step detail of everything that's on my desk right now. But you know what? That's not going to be interesting because it's just papers and pens and maybe a coffee cup or something. It's not very interesting. So the details that you want to give are the specific things that make the story interesting and important. And then cut out all that extra stuff. I think I said this prior, that a good story is life with all the boring stuff cut out. So that's what you're looking for. Can your readers imagine the setting, and can they picture the characters that you're talking about? Because you're going to be describing these people. You're going to be telling us what they look like and who they are, because this is how your life was changed through some sort of writing. Have you made your narrative meaningful enough so your readers are getting what they want out of it? Are they caring about what's going to happen? Is there significance in your narrative? Is that clear? Did you have a significance? Is it a significant enough event that has happened that it is clear to you that it really is something that is important? Is it clear to me as a reader that something important has really happened? And is your ending satisfying? Make sure that your ending doesn't just say, and then my story is over at the end, or it just, you finish your last line and then you hit enter and then you type the end or whatever. Just make sure that your ending is satisfying. See if your readers are left thinking anything. Are there any questions that they still have? And as you do that, you need to consider your options. After you've asked your question, you got to consider your options. Are there things that I need to trim? Are there complete sections I need to rewrite? Do I need to rewrite the entire thing? Do I need to refocus the whole thing? Consider what the options are. Do I need to scrap everything I've done and start from the beginning? Sometimes that does happen. I've written 30, 40 pages of a book and then had somebody read it and they said it was terrible, and I started over from page 1. Same story, but I started over from page 1. That was hard. It hurt. I spent a lot of time working on that, but what I worked on the next time was much better. And then, as I've mentioned before, have others read your work. That's not necessarily just having them read it to you, but have them read the work in total so they can tell you, after they've read it, what works for them, what's unclear for them. Having them read it to you does help, and it would help you to hear some of the hang-ups that are in the story. But having others read your work and then give you some opinions about it, that does help as well. So as you are editing, as you are writing, as you're working on everything, you need to know what you need to look for. So let's take a look. First off, you need to look at the order. And this is not just meaning is everything in order? Is everything like written well and whatever? Make sure that it's narrated in a clear order. If you're saying a story and then you say, "Oh yeah, I forgot this one thing," and then you got to jump back, that's not a clear order. That's what you do in your first draft, sure, but in your second draft you shouldn't say, "And this reminds me of another story," or, "Oh yeah, that's right, I need to go back and tell you one of these things." Um, Make sure that your order is direct. This is not a conversation, this is a paper, so there's not really that leeway to be able to move items around. Make sure you have strong transitions. These transitions will be that summary phrase at the beginning of a sentence, beginning of a paragraph that tells what the previous paragraph was, or how we're moving into this next item. Don't just jump from topic to topic. Transition between the paragraphs to make sure that the story flows all the way through. Transitions can make or break a story. The lack of them can draw people, they can push people away. And then a really good transition will make a person want to read more and more. Make sure you get your verb tense correct. Verb tense is going to be very important. Make sure your verb tense is the same throughout the entire story. Don't switch from present to past and past to present back and forth unless there's a specific reason that you're doing this. Make sure you have one verb tense throughout. You should have one verb tense, if you are changing, one verb tense per paragraph, but please don't change back and forth. They can get very, very tricky. Let's take a look at just verb tense real quick. I know you know what it is, but just as a refresher. Here's two different verb tenses. I walk into the store and see the last gallon of milk. I know I need it, so I run to the refrigerator and grab it. That is present tense. Now here's past tense. I walked into the store and saw the last gallon of milk. I knew I needed it, so I ran to the refrigerator and grabbed it. Both of these tell the same exact item. They tell the same exact thing, but it's a little bit different. There is an immediacy of the present tense. That's this first one. There's immediacy of it, and sometimes the immediacy of present tense does help. But most likely you're writing about something that has happened in the past. And so because it's happened in the past, it might be easier for you, and it might be a little bit easier for your reader if you use items that are in past tense. So I would suggest that you stay in past tense. That doesn't mean that I'm telling you you have to. You might find that writing in present tense works for you. But because this is a story that happened to you, most likely not right now, it happened to you a year ago, 2 years, 10, 15 years ago, whatever, it's going to be happening in the past. So I really suggest, because it's a little bit more natural to write this way, to write in the past tense. This also goes with point of view. Make sure that you're using the correct point of view throughout, and don't change your point of view. Don't do something that is called head hopping, where every time a different character speaks, you get inside their mind and you get a different point of view of the way the story is told, and you get every single character's thoughts and feelings on every single subject. That gets a little bit that can get a little bit difficult to read, and difficult to understand as well, and hard to keep track of. Whose head are we in? What point are we going in? So let's take a look at a couple of different things. This is first person. I went to the store. This is probably what you're working in, probably what you're writing in mostly as you are doing this literacy narrative. And this is going to be the one that's probably going to be the easiest to keep you moving through the story. Then third person is she went to the store. Same information, except we are now, as the reader, watching someone go into the store. Then there is second person. This one is very uncommon. I definitely suggest that you stay away from it. And if you have already written your paper and you're ready to turn it in, do a search through it. Make sure you did not use you, because this one is easy to jump into. So this is you went into the store. That is you as the writer telling me, the reader, what I am doing. And this is not always the case. This is probably not what you mean, but it's this. Think about like this. I walked into my house, I opened the refrigerator, and you couldn't believe the smell that was coming from it. Now that sounds great, it sounds fine, but I'm not there. you are telling me that I can't believe the smell that's coming from it. You need to focus what you're doing, what you're writing on. Just say, I went into my house and I opened the refrigerator and the smell hit me like a ton of bricks. Keep the tense and the person and the point of view straight throughout the story. Direct statements. Make sure that you are directing the story as necessary. Make sure that you are being direct in what you're saying. Don't give us just a piece of information. Give us all that we need to know. Don't hold out the surprise until the end of the paragraph. Don't hold out the surprise until the end of the paper. Let us know exactly what's going on. If your reader is confused, then help them to understand. If your reader's confused, they're not going to want to read your pieces anymore. They're not going to want to read to the end of your piece. If you have multiple female characters or multiple male characters, it's very difficult to read a bunch of he did, she did, they did this without us knowing who is acting it, especially if you have two characters of the same gender that are talking to each other and you are giving them actions and directions. It can be very confusing if you're not direct with who exactly is talking and who exactly is moving and working. Definitely don't backtrack in what you're writing. That means don't go and tell the beginning of a story and then the middle of a story and then remember there's something important that happened before the beginning of the story, so then you talk about that, and then you jump to the end of the story, and then you realize maybe there's something else in the middle that you need to go to. Don't backtrack. Try to tell the story in a linear fashion, because in a linear fashion, it's going to be the easiest order for your readers to understand, and it's going to be the clearest order for your readers to understand. So don't take steps back as you're working on the story. Just go linear fashion, and then if you realize, oh, I forgot that, then stop what you're doing, go back to where that information is important, and then insert it there. Make sure you have proper dialogue formatting. I'll talk about this a little bit more on another slide, but proper dialogue formatting will help your reader to understand who's talking, what they're saying, and what they are doing. So it's very important, and it makes sure that it looks the right way in your writing. Then after you have done all this, make sure you do proofreading. As I've said this before, but the grammar check and spelling check on your word processor is great, but it's not going to pick up words that are spelled correctly used in the wrong places. So if you have issues with than and then, your word processor is not going to say, most likely, it's not going to say that that's the incorrect word. If you have your issues with your theirs, your THIER and THERE and THEY apostrophe RE, you're not going to see the mistakes with your grammar checker. You're going to need to read through it, do a proofread, and if it helps you, print it out and take a pen and look at each line specifically as you're working through it. So it's very possible that as you're writing your literacy narrative, you have some dialogue, you have a conversation that you and somebody else had within your story. And for your characters to talk to each other, it needs to be formatted correctly so your reader can understand exactly what you are saying and who is saying and who is talking. So don't crowd the dialogue. Don't jam it all into one section. Don't make 3 people talking in a single paragraph. Don't crowd it with too much, like using too many adverbs to discuss. Like he walked in and said this sadly, or she came into my house and happily said this. Just let your dialogue do the talking instead of your dialogue tag. The dialogue tag is the he said and she said. Let your dialogue do the talking. Let your dialogue do the exclaiming and the questioning. Don't crowd the dialogue with too much stuff around, because if you do a lot of reading, most likely what you're doing is skipping the dialogue tags unless there are 5 or 6 people talking in one section. You're skipping the dialogue tags because the reader gets into an order of who is talking, and so they just skip the he said, she said. You need to format it correctly to make sure that your reader knows who is talking and what they're saying. So let's see how it's done. These are some incorrect formatting things. I've seen these in papers all the time, and there are probably some more, but these are incorrect. These are the things that I see mostly. So here's one of the issues. He walked in and opened the front door. Hello, he said. Now, on the surface, this is formatted correctly, but the problem is that this H in hello is lowercase. This needs to be uppercase because this is a sentence, yes, but this hello is the first word in a dialogue sentence. So you have the action and the dialogue. These are two separate sentences, even though they work in one sentence together because there's action and then dialogue. They work together, but this right here, this H in hello, that needs to be capitalized because it is the first thing that he said, and the way that he said it first. So it needs to be capitalized, the first word in a sentence. Also, this comma right here, this comma should go next to the O, and then these quotation marks will follow. So it would be quotation mark, capital H, hello, comma, quotation marks, he said. So there should also be a space there as well. All right, here's another thing that I see often. I don't like that actor. I wouldn't mind seeing a different movie. Now, if you look at this, this is the same person talking, but each time that they're speaking, there is a new set of quotation marks. These two right here, these two quotation marks are unnecessary. So these two need to be removed, as well as this period right here. This whole section is one person talking. So if it is one person talking, you need one set of quotation marks when they start talking and one set of quotation marks when they finish talking. Now, if there was I don't like that actor, comma, he said, I wouldn't mind seeing a different movie, that is fine, where there's two dialogue sections by the same person, but you broke it up with a he said, she said. So make sure that you don't confuse your reader by saying, oh, here's one person talking and this is another person, because each time quotation marks start, that is the beginning of a new person speaking. Here's another thing. This, as I wrote this is one whole paragraph, okay? So, hi, how are you? She asked. I'm fine, he said. Me too, Jim said. So this would be one paragraph or one sentence. This is confusing because there are too many people that are talking in one single sentence. You need to have each time a character speaks, it needs to be on a new line. So, hi, how are you? She asked. Then you should hit enter. I'm fine, he said. Then you should hit enter. Me too, Jim said. So every time a new character speaks, there should be a new set of paragraphs. It is kind of every time a character is speaking and acting, they should own their own paragraph. There should not be a combination of different people acting and talking in a single paragraph, because that gets confusing. Every time somebody speaks, just give them their own spotlight, their own stage. But let's take a look at some correct formatting. What I suggest you do is, if you're having some trouble with dialogue and formatting it, then take a look at your favorite novel, your favorite short story, and see how the dialogue is formatted in there. But make sure that it is an author that uses correct punctuation. There are some authors, one is Cormac McCarthy, he does not like the correct formatting of dialogue for some reason. He doesn't like the punctuation. So make sure that you're looking at an author that uses quotation marks and see how they use them in their work. So this is correct formatting. Hello, comma, I hope you're having a good day, comma, he said as he opened the door. So there's some action here. This is the dialogue, starts with a capital H, the correct commas and the correct spaces. Notice this comma comes before this quotation mark that ends what he has said, and then there's a space right here. and then there's this period. There should not be two periods here, because if there was a period right here, this would need to be capitalized. But this dialogue goes along with the action of him opening the door. Also, if you're having two characters that are speaking to each other, you need to make sure that their dialogue is on two separate lines. So, hello, he said. Enter. Hi, she said. So just make sure that you have the proper formatting there. It's really simple, but again, if you're having some issues, you're not quite sure, take a look at your favorite writer and see what they are doing with their dialogue. So now that you've done all this writing and rewriting, it's time to take stock of your work. You got to review. This is the last draft that you're going to turn in for this paper, so you need to make sure that you are ready to turn it in. So ask yourself a few questions. So take some pride in what you've written. Did you write well? What did you do? What did you do well? What worked for you as you were writing? But on the other side, maybe there's something you could still improve on. Maybe it was a method of research you could improve on, or a method of editing or formatting that you could improve on. What can you do to improve on this next draft, this next writing that you're going to be doing? What worked in your drafting process? What did you like about the writing? What did you enjoy? What did you not enjoy? And are there any techniques you can learn about as you're working on your future writing projects? Are there things that you learned as you were writing that you want to take into all the other papers you're going to be working on in the future? Think about these things. Think about this type of thing every time that you write a paper. Think about the techniques you've learned, the stuff that you are doing, the stuff that you have done, and see what you can learn about it. Because every time you're writing, you are in a classroom of one, and you are writing to become better. So every single time you put pen to paper, you type on a new document, you are becoming a better writer. Let's take a look at what we're going to be doing in the future. I would really like you to take a look at this whole class and think, what can I take from here? What can I do? What can I learn that I can move forward into my future classes? I would hope that there are some editing things you've learned, some formatting things you've learned, some more just some more writing techniques or enjoyment of different writing types that you can do. Maybe you have found that you like reading essays, or you like writing essays. Maybe it's something that you have discovered that you really enjoy. So you need to don't forget this class. Don't forget what you have done. And then take a look at what's next. What are you going to be doing as you are working on your next classes? I would hope that as you have practiced writing in this class, you have seen a joy of it. You have seen the step-by-step process that you can hone and you can direct through your whole writing life. And maybe this is the application you're taking from it. Maybe you can see that writing is difficult work, but the outcome is of a good and well-written piece is really worth it. So I would hope that as you're working on it, you can see how to tell a good story. You can see what you're going to do with how to tell your friends, this is my personal story, my memoir. This is, I'm going to tell you about somebody with my profile. I'm going to tell you what I like or don't like with an analysis. I'm going to tell you how I really enjoy something with an evaluation. So just take these and grow when you're writing. Just practice them. Get better. So lastly, I have really enjoyed this class. I've enjoyed working with you, and I'm sorry to see it end, but it is time to end. So I look forward to reading your next works and seeing where you go from here.